Hello everybody, it's Kara from Wild Book Garden, and today I'm here with a very exciting TBR swap and also my first reading vlog experiment. We'll see how that goes. So me and my friend Katie from ASeaofTomes did a TBR exchange. So basically we picked 3 books that we really loved and that we thought the other person could love, or that we were curious to see how they felt about, and we exchanged them. And we sent a note explaining why we picked them. And we're each doing a video where we vlog the experience and talk about how those books turned out. Also, I can tell you, because I am filming this intro actually after I read all the books, and so I can tell you from experience that this reading vlog was, again, very experimental. I have never done one before, so please bear with me as I figure out filming angles and lighting and all of that. I promise that I am starting to get the hang of it, so if and when I do another of these, it will hopefully be a slightly more aesthetically pleasing experience. But the important part is the books, right? So there is lots of talking about books, which is the main thing. I did include a clip of the unboxing process, so I will put that in, and let's see how these books turned out for me. I will of course link Katie's channel down below, as well as the video that she did, so if you would like to see the books I sent her and how she felt about them, please check that out. And yeah, enjoy the experiment, I guess. Okay, so I have the box here. I have opened the box, but I have not looked inside it or anything. So I'm going to see the books that Katie sent me that she wants me to read, and then after that I will open her letter and see what she said about them and why she picked them. So let's go ahead and see what's in here. Okay, so this is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova, and Katie has talked about this one several times, and it's always been super intriguing to me because the way Katie describes it, she's there's certain things that are tropes I don't normally like, but she thinks it's done in a way that I will, and I've just been really, really curious about this one. So this is inspired by the story of Dracula, but it's not exactly a retelling, but it kind of is. And there's a lot of atmosphere and kind of mysteries, and I think the main character is doing research and kind of slowly putting the pieces together about Vlad the Impaler, who was the inspiration for Dracula. Okay, then she also gave me Secrets of Shakespeare's Grave by Darren R. Hicks. So this is a middle grade mystery that is, I think, partly about Shakespeare, obviously, which I am so excited about. I obviously love Shakespeare, and I know when Katie read this one, she really enjoyed it. I think she might have read the sequel too. And then the last one in the box, this is one well, actually, I've heard a couple people talk about The Historian. I don't think I've ever heard of anyone besides Katie talk about the Shakespeare mystery books, and I don't really hear much about this book either, and that is The Turning by Emily Whitman. I added this to my TBR, I don't even know how long ago it was, but this just sounds really up my alley, and I'm surprised that no one has talked about it because it sounds like a really great premise and a story. I think it's based on Selkie folklore. This just sounds like a really lovely middle grade. I really love water adjacent kind of fantasy stories, and that's what this sounds like. And yeah, I am just so excited about this. So thank you, Katie. Thank you so much. I'm really looking forward to all 3 of these. So here are the 3 books that she sent me, and now I'm going to open her letter and see what she said about them. But about The Historian, she says that she read it back in 2015. It was one of the first books I picked up after college. I was enthralled from the first page. It's a long book, but it read quickly. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. I picked it for you because I know how much you enjoy Gothic literature. This is true. This is a really unusual take on the genre. It has an unusual format since there are 3 timelines it follows, and the historical aspects are well researched, incredibly fascinating, and it takes you to places you don't usually read about. Also, it's a loose Dracula retelling. All of these things point at a great Kara book. I hope you enjoy reading it as much as I did. So that is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. I'm really glad she picked that one because I have been really in the mood for that kind of atmospheric book. And then for The Secret of Shakespeare's Grave, she said that she picked this one up on a whim for the All the World's a Patriot-a-thon that I was one of the hosts for last year, and she said this why not turned into one of the best choices she made last year. It's no secret as to why I think it's a book you'll love. Shakespeare, middle grade, mystery and adventure, so many fun references. It's definitely a fun and quick read, but it has some heavier topics in it as well. That's something I really, really love in middle grade, or just books in general, ones that can balance that light tone with some heavier issues. And she says that she thinks I'll have a blast with it, and she'll be very curious to know what I think and to add another Shakespeare book to my collection. So that is Secrets of Shakespeare's Grave, which I'm really, really excited about. And then for The Turning, she says, finally, earlier this year I read The Turning. I absolutely loved it. So far it's probably my favorite read of the year. Once again, it's middle grade and it's a heavier one that deals with really great themes. I don't want to give too much away because it's one you should experience. The atmosphere of both sea and land settings and the characters are excellent. It was just one of those books that hit me in all the right places. I couldn't put it down. I read it in one day, which is rare for me, but the themes of family, friendship, identity, and figuring out how you fit in were all just excellently done, and I hope you love it. I feel like I'm definitely going to love this one. I am so looking forward to getting to it. So these are the 3 books that Katie has chosen for me to read. I'm super excited about all of these. I don't know which one I'm going to start with, and I will be attempting to do a kind of vlog type video. We will see. I've never done one before. I don't think of myself as being good at vlog videos, or like, I don't know, I just have never done them. So I'm not sure how this is going to turn out, but it will be fun to actually get to talk to you guys as I read something. And shout out to Beautifully Booked Bethany, because she's kind of where I got the idea for this. I will link Katie's channel down below, of course, so head over there if you would like to see the books that I sent to her.
Hey guys, so when I tried to record from my computer before, the audio was just not great, like it wasn't syncing, so we were trying with the headset mic, but basically I'm here to update on the book I started. So I decided to go with, there we go, The Turning by Emily Whitman. So this is a middle grade fantasy. I think it's like a fantasy and contemporary day, and it's about Selkies, which I'm really excited about. Our main character is a boy named Aaron, and he is like the turning. He's waiting for the turning to happen, which is basically when he's going to get his Selkie skin, so that he can transform from a human into a Selkie and back again. And that hasn't happened, and he doesn't know why that hasn't happened. I'm about 50 pages in, just over, and I'm really liking it so far. I really like the writing. I really feel for Aaron. I also think that the other Selkies are described really well. I really love his relationship with his grandmother. And I just think the author's doing a really good job of like individually characterizing the other Selkies. And I'm nervous because I feel like bad things are going to happen soon, but I am really liking this so far. So I will probably check in again once I've made more progress.
Hey guys. Okay, so interesting angle. Not sure how I feel about it. Hopefully it's not distracting. But I'm now about halfway through with The Turning, and there, I'm really enjoying it. We're getting to a part where like we're starting to meet some other characters. There's one in particular who I really like, or I like her so far. Aaron is like learning more about his past and the Selkies. My heart hurts for Aaron so much. Like he really just feels so alone, and like there's not anybody who is experiencing the exact thing that he is. I might actually like finish this today. Hopefully, like that is a plan. Checking in again. We're still at this weird angle because it really is the best option I have right now. So apologies. But I have like 10 or 11 chapters left. I think I'm like between 75 and 80% of the way done with The Turning by Emily Whitman. I'm really liking it still. A couple of like little things that I really like is how we see Aaron viewing the human world. Like he's getting better at it now because he does go to land for some part of this book, because it tells you in the synopsis, so I can say that. And it's really interesting to see the way he describes things in his head, because obviously he doesn't like know all the words for things, and I think that's done really well. It felt very like believable. I also really like the detail that he can talk to birds, like to like seabirds. Like there's this scene with a puffin that is really cute and I really enjoyed it. I also really like Nellie, who is a girl that he has made friends with, and yeah, I'm just like really enjoying this. Things are getting a little tense. Like I have some ideas about what might happen, but yeah, I am really liking this, and I am going to be finishing this today. What time is it right now? It is almost 7 o'clock at night, and I definitely won't need all that time to finish this, so I will be finishing this today, and I'm really excited to do that. So I will check back in when I'm done. Okay, so I just finished The Turning by Emily Whitman. I really enjoyed this. I think the way the ending played out was really good. I really liked some of the characters. I love the puffin. Like honestly, the puffin might be one of my favorite characters. But I just really enjoyed this. I also want to mention, which I did not realize until I got to the end of the book and like the author's note, Vashti Harrison illustrated this cover, which I think is amazing. I love her art. And then speaking of the author's note, there were some parts in that were really lovely as well. I always read the author's notes. I know not everybody does, but I did really enjoy that. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. I'm going to give The Turning 4 stars. There were some sections that I was not quite as engaged in. Like, I actually think my favorite part was when Aaron was actually on land. Just because like we got to like meet these other characters, and I feel like that part had more of like a, I don't know, I feel like there's more of a goal there. Although I did enjoy a lot of the sea parts as well. And yeah, I really enjoyed this. So book 1 is done, and it was definitely a success. I'm like not surprised I liked this so much because like I've been talking about how one of my favorite like tropes or ideas is like when I usually talk about this in the context of like time travel where it involves like basically a historical time period, and how the character always ends up like caught between kind of two worlds and two groups of people that they care about. And that's kind of what happens to Aaron here. So I'm not surprised I enjoyed this so much, but yes, definitely a success. And then I think the next book I pick up is going to be Secrets of Shakespeare's Grave by Darren R. Hicks. This is the first book in the Shakespeare Mystery series, and I'm just like really excited about this. I obviously love Shakespeare, so I'm really excited to see where this one goes. I don't know exactly when I will be picking that up, but I will update you as soon as I start it, or like as soon as I have a check-in. Hey everyone, so I am back at this weird filming angle. This is really looking like this is going to be where most of my updates come from, so I apologize if this is annoying, but I have started the second book in the secret TBR from Katie. This is Secrets of Shakespeare's Grave by Darren R. Hicks, and the illustrator, because there's some really cool illustrations in it, is Mark Edward Geyer. So like, there's these really cool drawings like at the beginning of every chapter and everything. So that's really cool. This is the first book in the Shakespeare Mysteries series, and as you can probably guess, this is a mystery that is involving Shakespeare in some way. We are following our main character, Colophon. I meant to look that up before I started this clip. I apologize. Her family owns a publishing business, and it's very prestigious, but it seems to be in some financial trouble right now. There have been these really unfortunate accidents that have happened very close together, and it's looking like now they might lose the business. And Colophon has some suspicions about what is going on there, and she's also realizing that there might be some like secret family treasure, and if she can find that, they might be able to save the business. And so yeah, like I'm not super far in, or I think I'm about like a quarter of the way through this book, and we're just kind of getting to like the setup of like the mystery that she's going to solve, or like the adventure she's going to go on. And so we start off with a flashback that kind of sets up this, like a few hundred years ago, it kind of sets up the publishing family and like maybe some of the secrets and the treasure. And actually, contrary to what usually happens, I really enjoyed that flashback. I really liked the writing and the setting and everything. And then the main part of the book, I'm struggling with a little more just because the writing is not quite clicking for me right now. It's hard to explain. There's like parts of it that feel very cutesy, I think, or like over-explained. Like I think the banter is like supposed to be very funny, and a lot of times it's not. I also, I find Colophon's name a little annoying. Like that's one of the things that's like a little like very cutesy, is like her and her brother are named Colophon and Case, which are like publishing terms. So I'm finding that like slightly annoying, but I am also just weird about main character names like that, so that probably wouldn't bother most people. And also her brother Case is a very annoying character. Right now he seems to exist to be obnoxious and to like show the contrast between him and Colophon, and how like annoying he is versus how great she is. But we are getting some indications they may end up working together like on this mystery, so I'm hopeful about that. And yeah, like I mean the chapter names are inspired by, like they're taken from Shakespeare quotes, which I love, so I'm hoping like we're definitely going to get, I think, more of the Shakespeare element as the story goes on. And yeah, so I am liking this. I think it is reading very quickly. I think I'm going to try and finish this today, so you will probably see another check-in from me hopefully soon. Well, obviously it's going to be soon for you, but hopefully soon for me too. And I don't remember if I mentioned this, but it's like about 4:15 in the afternoon, so yeah, I should have hopefully time to finish this tonight. Okay, so I am just over halfway in Secrets of Shakespeare's Grave, and I am appreciating that Colophon's brother Case, it looks like we are starting to see some development for him. I am also enjoying the like actual Shakespeare parts that we're starting to get. I'm liking that. Obviously I love Shakespeare, but still not loving the writing, and also I'm really not loving this one part of the storyline. It's one of those cases where like you know from the premise of the book what the main solution is gonna come from, and yet we are forced to see them attempt other things, And rather than just hearing about how those things don't work, we are forced to watch them not work in great detail. And I am just really strongly disliking those scenes, so that's not been super fun. I have just over 100 pages left, but yeah, so far I am not enjoying this one as much as The Turning. I do like some of the details we're talking about with Shakespeare's life. Like, they mentioned that he was actually a businessman, and how a lot of people don't like to, a lot of Shakespeare fans don't like to talk about that because they feel like it tarnishes his image, which is very true. That reaction is very true, and so I'm appreciating little details like that. Okay, so I just finished the book, and just to kind of sum up my thoughts, I did like the Shakespeare elements. I was kind of expecting there to be more of those, but I did like some of that. I think though, this kind of National Treasure-esque plot, running around monuments and figuring out clues, at least based on my experience with this book, maybe it's something I prefer in movies, because I just wasn't super engaged with that part. And as far as the characters, I did like that Case was not quite as flat as he first appeared, but overall, I feel like the characters were very flat. I wanted Colophon to succeed, and I wanted them to beat the bad guy, but that was pretty much it. I didn't really have any particular attachment to these characters. Especially Julian, I noticed that because he's one of Colophon's cousins, and they're the ones who are really trying to figure out this mystery and track down this family treasure and figure out these clues. So they spend a lot of time together, and I just I don't know, he felt very bland to me. Like I said, I did really enjoy the prologue of this one. I really liked the writing and the setup, and I thought it was really interesting. And then the writing kind of lost me. I mentioned this in one of my other check-ins, but it just feels very overly cutesy in some ways. I think this book is trying really hard to be funny, and I don't feel like it's particularly funny. There's a plot line I found personally very frustrating, because it's we already know how this is going to go. We don't need to be here for it. I feel like if you guys are watching this channel, you know how I feel about this already, but just in case somebody's response would be, well, it's a middle grade book, what do you expect? I read a lot of fantastic middle grade, and I have just as high standards for middle grade as I do for any other age range. So I don't think this being a lackluster mystery for me personally is reflective of, reflects on the age, the intended age audience for this book. So I'm going to give Secrets of Shakespeare's Grave 3 stars. I definitely didn't enjoy it as much as The Turning, but it wasn't a bad book by any means. It was just kind of middle of the road for me. And this means that the only book I have left is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova, I think is her name, which I'm really intrigued by. Katie mentioned that she thinks that one is kind of the wild card, she's not sure how I'm gonna get on with it, but I'm actually excited. I think it's gonna be really interesting. It's gonna be a kind of a gothic feeling book, I think. So I will check back in whenever I end up picking that one up. So today we are using the time-honored tradition of the precarious stack of books tripod. But I just wanted to update you guys that I have started the third and final book in this vlog. That is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. This is a gothic novel that's a really interesting take on the Vlad the Impaler / Dracula story, or mythos, and it's a historical research thriller is kind of what it feels like, which for some people might be boring, but I'm actually finding it very interesting. I'm not super far. I'm 56 pages in, so I'm just about to start chapter 7, and this is quite a long book. So far, that's really one of my only, I don't know if I even want to say complaints, but it's almost 700 pages, and I feel like the pace is a little slower than I would like. You guys know I rarely talk about pacing, But just with this book, I feel like I want to find things out faster than the book is giving them to me, which arguably is kind of what you want in a like mystery or thriller. But I am just really invested. I was also a little concerned about the writing style when I started. That was kind of the biggest hang up I kind of went into this book with, is like, you know, based on my impression from the writing, I was like, oh, is this gonna feel like very pretentious or overwrought? And I actually don't feel like it is. I feel like it's really suiting the atmosphere and the kind of story. I'm just really enjoying the atmosphere in general. And yeah, so far I am really liking this one. I feel like I'm reading this pretty slowly, so I'm not sure how I'm going to stagger the check-ins I do. Because I am enjoying it and I am very engaged while I'm reading it, but for some reason it's just taking me longer than I would expect to like get through the book. But yeah, I am really liking it, like really, really enjoying it so far. Okay, so I just did some filming, so I thought I would take the opportunity to also check in about the historian. So I am about halfway through now, and I have some more thoughts. So initially I was really enjoying it, and there are still some things I'm liking. This book does not need to be 700 pages, and it's reading very, very slow. Like I felt like I should be halfway through the book when I was only like 100 pages in. It just reads very, very slowly, and I do think the atmosphere can be good. I like some of the settings, but Elizabeth Kostova just does them so much. Like, so much of the first part of the book is just bouncing around to different cities and like kind of doing the same scene like over and over again. And I do like some of the descriptions of the settings, but I just don't think we needed that much. Like, yeah. And then, so this is like a story within a story within a story kind of thing. Some parts of that work, and I have also seen people say that it's like an homage to the original Dracula novel by Bram Stoker, which I get, but like the main character of this book does not really need to be here at all. Well, we're finally getting to the part where she is actually doing something, but for the first part, like, she is just there to receive the story of her dad, who is just kind of repeating the story that he got from someone else. Like, there's so many layers that we don't need. And yeah, like, this book is just very slow. There's also a specific scene that I hated. It's a very specific trope that I hate seeing in movies or books or anything, which is where we have a character who is very bad. We already know they're bad. I mean, in this case, this person has been like murdering and torturing people for hundreds of years. But they really need to let us know that they're bad. So do you know what we get? A gruesome death of a pet scene, told in horrible detail. And I just hate that. And I knew immediately that was coming. As soon as the character was like looking around for their pet to feed them, I was like, here we go. And I was right. And I will tell you guys, I skipped that part. When I realized what was going on, I skipped as much of it as I could. I just think it was really unnecessary, and it was like a page and a half, and it just irritates me that that's used as like a shorthand for, oh, but this is like a bad guy. It's like, we already know they're a bad guy. So that's like a personal thing. I don't know if other people would be as bothered by that as I was, but I hated it. There are a couple of side characters who I like more, but overall the characters just don't seem very well developed. This book is just very overwritten, and none of the extra writing seems to be used for characterization, which I just find very frustrating. I heard from another reviewer who was quoting a different review. I guess somebody was saying how, like, you could take any section of dialogue from this book and it is impossible to tell which character it comes from because they all talk the same, and I agree with that. There's only a couple of exceptions. I also knew going in that there was going to be a lot of like looking through documents, and this is like a research mystery. I think I called it like a historical research thriller or something in the first clip, and there are still some parts of that I'm liking. I don't know, I'm feeling kind of middle of the road about this book right now because I was really enjoying it at the beginning, but a lot of things about it are starting to get to me. Yeah, like I don't complain about pacing very often, but this is so slow. I can't imagine that I still have like 350 pages of this. Like, I don't understand. This book does not need to be that long, because there's been so little story so far, and I think we still could have gotten the atmosphere and the building tension. Like, I'm gonna say, well, we'll see how I feel at the end, but I'm gonna say right now that you could have cut 300 pages out of this book. and it would have been better for it. Like I'm just finding the length very frustrating, and I think that's another thing where like these other things that are bothering me about the book, I think, well, they're bothering me more because I'm having to read them longer. We'll see how things continue. I am still liking the atmosphere. I think some of the tension is built really well. And like I said, there are a couple side characters that I'm actually liking, which is good because a lot of the other characters are just very flat. I also like, I'm not somebody who's usually bothered by like the format of letters in books. Like, you know, I accept it as like a device. Like, yes, in real life, people would never write letters like this. It doesn't usually bother me. But in this book, it's really hard not to notice that, like imagine this man, like, leaving his daughter this letter that is probably at least 300 pages worth of this book. Like, how long did this take you? It's just kind of weird and funny to think about that. But anyway, so yeah, first update was very positive. This one's very negative, so I'm kind of like somewhere in the middle with this book. After the first like 200 pages, it did pick up, which is good. So let's hope that trend continues, and I will talk to you when I've made some progress. Hey guys, so it is late, so I apologize for the weird lighting, but I have finally finished The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova, and I wanted to wrap this up. So as you probably saw from my previous clips, at first I was enjoying it, having a good time, and then I was no longer having a good time. And I'm really sad to end with this book because this is by far my least favorite of the three. I'm so sorry, Katie. I really didn't like this. This book is excruciatingly detailed. It is so long, and that's, I think, one of the things that frustrated me most about it, because even though all these other things about it that I disliked would still have annoyed me, if this book were a reasonable length, I think I would not have felt so resentful about it. Like, I get the building of atmosphere, I get kind of the slow unfolding of like research and clues, and at the beginning I was enjoying that, but it just went on for so long, and like the number of like incredibly detailed letters that these characters write to each other is just absurd. So that was really irritating. There was also like, I feel like the romances were done really weird. I mean, one of them was more prevalent than the other, and the other one, like the less prominent one, I liked the love interest character. They were actually one of the more likable characters, but the person who like they had feelings for or like had some kind of connection with was like the main character of the book, who has absolutely no personality. Like, we don't even know her name, and I just, like, she exists to have this story told to her for the most part. She does end up becoming a little more active later in the book, but she, like, the whole book could have happened without her, basically. And I just have a hard time believing that anybody could have an emotion about her, which sounds terrible, but like, she is so, like, I can't even say bland, because she's like not a character. Like, she just exists to have the story told to her, or to find letters that tell her the story, or to find postcards that tell her the story. I will say one good thing, the ending did not make me want to throw the book at the wall like I was afraid it would, because I had heard from some reviewers that the ending was terrible, and I can kind of, I guess, see what they mean, but it wasn't as bad as I was afraid it was going to be, so thank goodness. Like I said, I did like some of the atmosphere. I thought some of the setting descriptions were really good, but there were just so many of them, and like the sequence of events was always the same. It was like these characters would like have this really long section of the story told to them, or they would find a letter that told them this section of the story. They would go to another city. We might get some description of the city. They would maybe find a clue, but more likely they would just read about somebody else finding a clue. Like, I was very bored. I had to force myself through this book, and I just kept feeling like I should be done with this book already. There were sections that I was engaged with, though. Like, there was a point near the middle where I actually found myself reading this more quickly, and I was very engaged in what was happening, and we were meeting some side characters who I liked more. But then it just got bogged down again. And then something else that bothered me throughout the book is there was this weird flavor of like Orientalism or othering, and like in some cases I guess it makes sense because of like the time period. Like a huge chunk of the story takes place like several decades ago, so that I think makes more sense. But it just felt unnecessary because the author was not writing several decades ago. I mean, I think this book is like 16 years old, but you know, I'm sure that people were not quite as thoughtful about how they wrote certain things. So like maybe that makes sense, but it just was very grating. And like some of the descriptions of settings and people like in different cities were actually really good. But some of the other portrayals, like like the treatment of like, and just the perspective on like the peasant characters was very odd. I am gonna give The Historian 1 star. I just liked so little about it, and the things that I disliked were so monumental that I don't feel like I can give it higher. I'm so sorry, Katie. Maybe you skipped this part. I hope you skipped this part of the video because I do feel really bad. But yeah, this just was not a book for me. Okay, so I thought I would do a little wrap-up section at the end here, and I'm actually going to go in order of least favorite book to most favorite book. I'm not going to summarize these because presumably you have been watching the rest of the video. So the first one I have is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostova. Definitely this was my least favorite of the bunch. I did end up giving this book 1 star. I did enjoy some of the setting and the atmosphere, and some parts of the book I was very engaged in, like the mystery and the building tension. But for the vast majority of it, I wasn't. So as far as the negative things, the characters were incredibly flat. I've mentioned that the main female character basically existed to like have the story told to her by other people. And even the other characters who did have a more active role in the story, like her father, also very flat. And one of the other female characters like had some interesting moments, but not a lot of personality. Again, I feel like the romances were very weirdly written. I also really didn't like the perspective on some of the like characters or cultures in this book. And like at one point, one of the characters says like, oh, there's no point in talking to my mother. She's very simple. She's like a very simple peasant woman. She won't know anything that can help us. And then later when they realize that she actually does know something that could help them, they go and talk to her, and this same character is like angry with her mother because she is wasting her potential. Like her mother is apparently very smart and is like wasting her potential at this job. And it's like, so which is it? Like it was even very inconsistent in the way that it was condescending. It was very, very slow, and I read this book very, very slow, and I am not normally a slow reader, I think. I would just read for hours and feel like I should be like halfway through the book, and I was like not even 100 pages in. It was just very, very descriptive and very repetitive in a lot of places. Like so much of this was traveling to different cities and like being told a part of the story by another character. And like, again, I liked some of those city descriptions and atmosphere, but there were so many of them, and like so much of the plot of this book is just like people finding out secondhand like research that was already done. Like I was not opposed to the idea of like a research thriller or a mystery, but I don't feel like this one was executed very well. I also mentioned there was a trope that I loathe in this book, which is like, we already have a character who we know is bad, but just to really drive that point home, we got an extremely descriptive and gruesome death of a pet scene, which I just hate when authors do that. Like, this character has been murdering and torturing people for hundreds of years, but you think we haven't gotten that they're bad, so you need to like add that extra thing on top. So I found that very annoying. I also was really uncomfortable with some of the way that different cultures were portrayed, or different different groups of people. Some of it I think was interesting, was well done. Like one of the things I did like is the way that Paul has to realize his privilege from living in the United States, and how like people who live in other countries or under different kinds of government, it's like he takes a lot of his life for granted, and like realizing that he shouldn't be doing that, but also showing some of the beauty in these other countries as well. I thought that aspect was actually really well done, but there were other parts of the book where it felt very, there's like a pretty strong flavor of like Orientalism, or like just that cultures and people were written about in a way that felt very othering, even when it was supposed to be complimentary. So I didn't like that. And then one of the most frustrating things about this book that I have complained about several times is that it is almost 700 pages. This book absolutely did not need to be this long. It could have had 300 or 400 pages cut and still had a story with the same effect. And actually I think it would have been more effective and more interesting. Like you still can build atmosphere without like 300 or 400 extra pages. And I just found that really, really frustrating, because all these things that I was disliking or hating about this book would still have bothered me if the book were shorter, but I think I would have been less resentful if the book had been shorter, because I was reading these things that I didn't like for almost 700 pages. So yeah, this one, sadly, I'm sorry, Katie, but this one really did not work for me. This was my least favorite by far of the three, but I know she said that like this was the one she was kind of uncertain about. So I guess that kind of makes sense. But yes, so this was my least favorite of the three. And then going up from there, I also read Secrets of Shakespeare's Grave by Darren R. Hicks. And this one, like, I liked but didn't love. I didn't really like the humor, and I think there were a lot of places where the book tried to be funny and it just didn't work for me. I did like that we got some character development from some of the side characters. There was surprisingly little Shakespeare in this book, considering like the name of the book, but I did really like the Shakespeare parts. And yeah, like this was fine. I think one of the big things is that there's a really significant chunk of the plot that felt very unnecessary, but this was a really quick read, and again, there were things I liked about it. I ended up giving Secrets of Shakespeare's Grave 3 stars, and then definitely my favorite book of the three, and I think I originally gave this 4 stars, but like, I don't know, it's like really living in my feelings. So this one could definitely end up as like a 4.5 or 5 stars as my feelings and thoughts settle more. But that is The Turning by Emily Whitman. I loved this one. I loved Aaron as a character. I felt for him so much. I really enjoyed the writing and the atmosphere and the setting. I thought the way that we saw the human world through the eyes of this Selkie boy was very clever and creative and interesting, and it like made sense for him as a character. I really, really loved the friendships he develops, like those supporting characters I really enjoyed. There's a Puffin who I mentioned I just love. Definitely like one of my favorite characters, I think. I really like that this is a Selkie book, and I really, really love the themes of this book, like about fitting in and family and found family, and just like, yeah, it was really beautiful. I did really love this, and it's definitely an underhyped book. Like, I know that this is Katie's favorite book she's read so far this year, and it doesn't have many Goodreads reviews or ratings, so hopefully more people will pick it up. And yeah, so this is definitely my favorite of the three. I really, really loved that one, and I definitely think like overall this was a very successful experience, even though I had obviously one dud. I did have fun with the Shakespeare one, and the fact that I had like one book that I really, really loved, like honestly, I consider that a huge success. So Katie, I definitely think this was a success. Hopefully my picks were for you as well. Yeah, so I think this is the end of this like TBR swap reading vlog experiment. Please comment down below and let me know if you have read any of these books, what you thought of them. I definitely have planned to do this with other online book friends. I really had fun with it, and again, like because I'm filming this after all the reading vlog check-ins, I am definitely, I think, improving, hopefully, at the like reading vlog aspects. So hopefully I will continue to improve as I do more of these, but even for my first one, I personally had a lot of fun, and I hope that it didn't turn out too badly. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you soon with another video, and I hope you love the next book you read. Bye!